Greens, the Māori Party have had, why isn't national polling any higher?
Look, what I'd say is it's going to be a very tight election. There is no doubt about it. This country is heading in the wrong direction, but the only poll that I'm focused on is October the 14th. That is the one that matters the most, and that's when New Zealanders get to choose, do you want the coalition of chaos or do you want strong, stable government?
The latest poll out has the Māori Party as kingmaker. So do you regret saying that, ruling them out?
Absolutely not. No.
Is your leadership holding national back?
Absolutely not. No, we've got a lot of work to do over the next 5 months, but we're making our case to the New Zealand people. I think we've been coming forward with really practical ideas about how we can govern after October the 14th, and I'm really looking forward to doing that over the next 5 months.
But polling lower than Judith Collins ahead of the 2020 election, that must...
As I said, the only poll that matters is October the 14th. That's the one we're fixated on.
How confident are you that you can win Kiwis over in the 5 months to the election?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, we've made tremendous progress over the last year and a half. If I think about it, just take that last poll. Labor's down 15 points on that same poll. We're up, 10 to 13 points. So, we've made great progress. We know we've got a lot more to do, but we've got the ideas, we've got the focus, and we're going to take our case to New Zealand people.
This isn't a problem with the party. It's your personal polling. So what will you do to try and improve that in particular?
I'm up and down and around this country each and every week, getting a chance to meet with everyday Kiwis, and they tell me their concerns, and they know they can trust me to be able to get things done for them, to get this country turned around and get it back on track.
Mr. Luxon,
Yes, ma'am.
Act want to get Kiwis a $34 billion cut over 4 years. Do you agree with that?
Look, I haven't seen what they've proposed, but that is certainly not what I'm proposing. What we're talking about is giving Kiwis a tax break. Regular, everyday working Kiwis deserve to get more of their money back so they can spend it as they see fit. The way we want to do that, and we hope this government will do it in this budget, is to inflation adjust tax thresholds. It's the fairest thing to do.
On the policy that you've announced, on the fiscal discipline policy, how many IRD staff are you to hire for the receipt?
With 14,000 more public servants in Wellington since this government came to power, there's plenty of resource to do it. The reality is that's a core function of Treasury, is to make sure that there are strong business cases before initiatives are launched, and importantly to make sure that there are really strong evaluation afterwards.
Can I just add there, I reckon AI could do it.
Yeah.
How much will this policy cost?
We can fund it well within baselines. What we're talking about is a change of behaviour and a change of practice, something that we used to do in government for many, many years and decades this way. We need to make sure we've got good cost evaluation up front. We need to make sure we've got good measurement once an initiative's been implemented. I can tell you it's going to be very achievable within our baselines, and it's the core function of what we expect from the public service to do, and they've just stopped doing it.
Mr. Luxon, Act want to have 17.5% tax under 70,000 and 28% over 70,000. Would you ever entertain that?
We'll have our tax policy and our fiscals built off the back of the most up-to-date financials for the Crown accounts when they're available before the election. That's entirely appropriate that we do it that way because this economy is deteriorating so quickly that we need to make sure that we've got the latest set of Crown accounts when we talk about our fiscal and tax plan.
And how aligned are you with Act on tax, given that you may be doing policy?
Well, I'm very focused on changing this government, and by changing this government, the only way to do that is to party vote national, and that's the case that I'm taking to the New Zealand people over the next 5 months.
So how will more bureaucracy at Treasury drive better performance?
What I can say is there is huge amounts of bureaucracy in New Zealand at the moment, and what we expect Treasury to be able to do is to be able to measure the effectiveness of spending, government spending, and make it very clear whether it's been effective or not. If it's not effective, I plan to stop it and redirect that money to places and programs that are working.
Do you have a firm figure on the taxpayer receipt initiative?
Again, it's very straightforward for us to do, to be able to make it very clear to New Zealanders where their money is going. I want New Zealanders to have more literacy about where government spending goes and where their taxes go. So it's very easy to do. You see councils, for example, do this up and down the country very easily about where the rates go. We can do the same with taxes.
But do you think it's hypocritical to slam the government spending, then announce policy and not actually give a firm figure to back it up?
I'm giving you, be really clear, that I'm giving you a sense of how we are going to manage in government. And what I'm being really clear about is I expect when we spend taxpayers' money, we know whether we got a result or not. I expect New Zealanders to understand where that money's gone. And I also expect our CEOs and their top teams to be very focused on delivering outcomes for New Zealand. At the moment, this is a government that's spending $1 billion extra each and every week, and it's not getting improved outcomes. And we have no accountability around that spend. So these are disciplined things to make sure we have fiscal discipline in New Zealand.
So obviously, giving every taxpayer seems quite a receipt seems quite labour intensive.
As
taxpayers will want to know how much that's going to
It's pretty simple. It just comes as part of their annual tax return with their
So,
information.
this type of information is already available, so why make the inland revenue produce another form of cash return for the taxpayers? Do you know how much this will cost?
I'm going to be really explicit about making sure that New Zealanders understand where their taxes are going and where that money is being spent. I think that's entirely appropriate.
You talked about matching council debt, longer, I guess extending council debt at the long term. Do you think there's a case to make for that to be for longer term government debt as well? And I guess what difference would that make in terms of infrastructure funding?
Yeah, I'll let Nicola.
Look, I think we do need to be open to new financing arrangements to get long-term infrastructure built, including working with the private sector on those arrangements. It's clear New Zealand has an infrastructure deficit, as Chris said today, and we're determined to be a government that doesn't just put visualisations of light rail on the front page of the paper, that gets on and build things. And so that does mean being innovative about funding and finance.
Is the government doing enough to address falling literacy rates?
No, absolutely not. I mean, the government has spent $5 billion more. It's hired 1,400 more bureaucrats. And yet Chris Hipkins, who was Minister of Education, has delivered worse academic achievement. And so we have a terrible situation with respect to our 15-year-olds, with respect to their literacy and numeracy. We're going to change that. What we're going to do is teach the basics brilliantly in primary and intermediate. And we want to make sure that 80% of our kids, when they hit high school, are actually at expectations. We want New Zealand back in the top 10 countries by 2033. We can do it. We've done it before. But Chris Hipkins has failed abysmally as an education minister on both achievement and attendance at school.
Will you rule out scrapping the gun register?
Oh, look, our view is that the gun register is implemented and is essentially happening. It's important that we make it work well for legal gun owners. That's not too onerous, and that the costs don't blow out. But I have to tell you, the major problem in New Zealand is illegal guns, and that requires us to be backing our police, to be tough on gangs, and to give them the tools they need to crack down with warrantless search powers to go after those illegal guns that are driving a 30% increase in violent crime.
Mr. Luxon, you won't mind if I take you back one sentence to education. What do you make of the government's announcement today? 300 new classrooms, up to 4 new schools.
Well, look, I'll look forward to seeing it when I see it, because Chris Hipkins has been Education Minister for 5.5 years and has achieved absolutely nothing. We have worse academic outcomes in terms of achievement. We have worse academic outcomes in terms of attendance at school. So again, this is a government that likes to make announcements, but actually getting things done is a different deal. I'm going to get things done. I'm going to get the country turned around. I'm going to get it back on track again.
What sort of investment do you want to see in the budget in regards to education?
Well, what Nicola and I have committed to is that we want to see continued investment in health and education in particular. But as I've said today, and why I've talked about managing money and fiscal responsibility and discipline today, is it's about how you use that money to get outcomes. And again, as I said, it's incredible to have pumped $5 billion more into education and have got worse outcomes. It's a rather unique skill set that this government has, to spend more and yet get worse outcomes. So we want to make sure that we're going to invest in the basics brilliantly. That's what I want to see in a budget. I want to see a compulsory hour of maths, an hour of writing, an hour of reading in primary and intermediate school. So we set our kids up to go on to high school, actually able to extend themselves and be able to realise all the jobs and potential that they have. That would be a good starting point for this government.
Do you have a figure?
Well, what we've said before is that we think that's an investment that we can certainly afford and make with respect to investing in the basic curriculum incredibly well, making sure we define a curriculum year by year, that we actually back our teachers up by supporting them with more training in that space, and that we also pay for their council registration. Teachers shouldn't have to pay to actually teach.
You've sought the PTA dispute with teachers?
It's really important that dispute is closed really quickly now. It's gone on for a long time, and it comes on the back of lots of COVID disruptions. It also this was the year that we needed our kids back in schools, and following the weather events and now disputes that have been ongoing, we want the government to close that up really quickly, because it's not fair on parents and it's not fair on those children who are getting now another year where they're falling behind where they need to be, and that's limiting the opportunities that they get to have in order to be able to go forward in their life.
What about immigration? Can I ask you about that? You mentioned it a few times. Have you got a bit of color around that?
Well, again, what we're saying is that New Zealand has been in a rather unique situation where we have relatively low unemployment. We have massive job shortages in every sector in every region of this country, and yet we have 50,000 more New Zealanders on unemployment benefit. And so we are desperate to make sure that we are able to compete for talent around the world and to be able to bring that talent here to New Zealand. A good example for us is what's been happening with respect to nurses and midwives. We have a 4,000 shortfall on nurses, and yet what we've said, part of our policy of making sure we can grow talent from within New Zealand and keep it, but we want to be able to attract internationally qualified nurses here to this country as well. And so we need much more competitive immigration settings to compete with other countries who also want that talent.
And you'll be given more detail around numbers and things because it is a numbers game.
Well, it is, but at the moment, it's very clear to us that where we have real shortages, if you think about nurses and midwives, for every nurse that we train, we lose at least one, maybe two nurses out of our system. So we need to be able to say to those nurses, qualified international nurses, come to New Zealand on a temporary work visa for 6 months, bring your family, find yourself a job, and then we will actually reimburse and your relocation costs up to $10,000. That's our policy that we announced just recently. So that's the sort of thing that we need to do to be really pragmatic to solve the problems that we've had.
Do you think enough planning has taken place with regard to the immigration that we are actually expecting? I mean, I think there's a number potentially annualised to 100,000.
Well, look, I think the reality is that it's a government that's been anti-immigration for so long, and it's actually been one of the contributors to why we've got such high domestic inflation. But the key thing is our immigration policy needs to be very strongly linked to our economic policy. And so when those two things are aligned, that's when you get good support from the public for immigration. But that's what we need to make sure that happens. And we have big shortages in our economy at the moment, and immigration will play a role in supporting that.
So sometimes the criticism has been levelled in New Zealand that we kind of expect Scandinavian level services for American levels of tax. You're proposing potentially tax cuts. Do you think that we need to be more realistic? How do you square that equation?
The biggest thing, and I'm trying to make the point today, is that as a former CEO who's used to getting different results with the same amount of resources that other CEOs may have, it's the same thing here. We have a lot of money. We are spending $1 billion more every week. The government is raising $100 million in extra tax every day. We don't have a taxing problem. We don't have a borrowing problem. We have a spending problem here in New Zealand, that we are not making every dollar generate the biggest bang that it possibly can. That's what we have to do, and that's why putting in fiscal discipline, as I've outlined today, and giving a framework for that is so important.
Do you reject the idea that your leadership might be held a national bag?
Absolutely. I've got the full support of my caucus. We are out there making our case to the New Zealand people, and I'm very proud of the progress that we've made. We've got more work to do, and we're going to continue to do that to get this great country turned around.
Mr. Luxon, is replacing unhealthy classrooms and providing more classrooms for growing school levels a priority for National?
It's a basic of running an education system, I would have thought. And so it's odd that it's an announcement, because it should be done as the basic requirement of an education department.
And with the new announcement of an additional $400 million, would a national government continue that investment in schools?
What we've been really clear about is we're going to continue to increase our investment in education each and every year that we're in government, as we will on healthcare. But again, it's what you do with the money to get the biggest bang for your buck, to get improved outcomes for the New Zealand people. And at the moment, what our kids need most is an investment in them to teach them the basics incredibly well. It's not about always how much money you spend, it's about what you do with that money to generate a return and an outcome. Okay, thanks so much, guys. Appreciate your time.